Welcome to the Week 12 edition of Dolphins in Depth. I'm your host, Miami Herald columnist Omar Kelly. Joining me is Barry Jackson. We're here to break down Wednesday's practice heading into the Dolphins' home game against the New England Patriots. Man, Barry, we've talked about this all season, especially after the losing skid started, especially in the month that we were without Tua. You just needed to hold on and then win the games when the Sisters of Mary were coming in, or the Eastern Marylands of the NFL were coming in, and really hold the fort down until you can get yourself in a position to get to that Green Bay game on Thanksgiving and get your season righted. The Dolphins, as we've kind of calculated, can't afford one more loss, Barry? Is that where we're looking at it?
I would think probably one. If you lose one, then you can get to 10 wins. If you lose two, then you're 9-8. I'm not sure Denver falls to 9-8 the way they've been playing. Chargers will be difficult to catch. Ravens, as you know, will be even more difficult to catch. So you're likely looking at that Denver wildcard spot, which they own at the moment at 6-5. So I feel like you have to get to 10 wins to have a real chance.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm right. I think 10 is the magical number. We'll see what happens if they don't get there. But you know what can't happen, Barry? They cannot suffer a loss to the New England Patriots this week, Sunday at home. Drake Maye is their new starting quarterback. I can't exactly tell you that the play is better than Jacoby Brissett, but what I can tell you is he's probably a little bit more dangerous. As you know, Barry, I'm not a huge Jacoby Brissett fan, but Jacoby did put them within an inch of a foot of winning that game on the road. But then again, that was with their number 3 quarterback, Tyler Snoop Huntley, as the starter. Do you think that New England Patriots, this semblance of the New England Patriots, can present much of a chance of an opportunity?
Yes. And I don't agree with you that Jacoby Brissett is every bit as much a threat as Drake Maye. I'm a little afraid. I'm a little queasy with Drake Maye, and I'm going to tell you why. He had his best game as a pro last week, 280 yards passing. He's averaging 9.2 yards per carry. So he has the elusiveness that Jacoby Brissett does not have. We know how the Dolphins struggle against elusive quarterbacks with Kyler Murray and with Josh Allen. So I'm a little concerned. Maye has ability, unlike Brissett, where there's a ceiling there, right, in terms of what he's able to do. So because of the unknown, I do not think this is necessarily going to be a typical Tua walkover over New England. So I would be a little concerned. Do I think they'll win? Yes, but I'm a little alarmed. I'll tell you why else I'm a little alarmed. Terron Armstead is playing with a gimpy knee, and all the credit to him. He's been playing at an extraordinarily high level. He's the number 1 tackle rated by Pro Football Focus, but obviously he's been unable to practice for the last week and a half, and you just wonder, can he continue to get by on a knee that clearly is limiting him? Because if he leaves the lineup and then you have to go to Patrick Paul, then all of this great pass protection suddenly becomes compromised. So I would be a little bit concerned about that. Also, pass rush remains an issue. They have the fewest sacks of any team in the AFC, even though Chop Robinson has a lot of pressures. You're not getting Chubb back anytime soon, if at all. He's still not ready to practice. It's another week without Kendall Fuller. So even though things are looking promising, there's still some yellow cones out, Omar, which have me concerned. Do they get to 5-6 this week to make the Green Bay game important Thanksgiving night?
I will make this argument here, and while I do have some concern about not just Terron Armstead but the entire offensive line, I think they've had a run game dip in recent weeks, and they can tell you all that they want about how throwing the ball and shorter passes is the equivalent of a run game, blah 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 blah. I'm not buying any of it, because when you actually run, there are no holes. How much different is this right now, right this very minute, where Terron doesn't practice at all last week, and we don't know what his status is for the rest of this week. They had a walkthrough today, so they weren't practicing. I think a lot of that has to do with the Thursday night game that's upcoming. You don't want to put too much of a load on the players, and it's important to do installs and walkthroughs so you can install plays. But how much different is this right now with what you're seeing from Terron Armstead than what you've been seeing for the last 2 years, where he didn't practice and then he played?
It's different. I'll tell you why. It's a little nuance on the injury report where the Dolphins, by league rule, and every team have to give a reason for why a player is not practicing. It has always been listed as rest for Terron Armstead on Wednesdays. Last week, Wednesday, Thursday, his absence was attributed to rest/knee. Well, I'll tell you what happened today. The injury report, which is a simulation of what would have happened if they'd actually practiced instead of a walkthrough, listed only knee. It no longer listed rest. So he clearly has an issue that's bothering him. And we know the running game hasn't operated nearly as well the last couple of weeks with Alec Ingold. We talked to Alec today. He said that the calf has regressed over the couple of weeks. He said he's made some progress. He's not sure if he'll play Sunday. He said it'll be a game time decision. But he said basically his body was deteriorating from the Arizona game through the practice week up to the Buffalo game. So that's why he hasn't played. Running game hasn't been nearly as well without him. So because of Ingold's calf and because of Armstead's knee, I'm a little concerned about their running game, which obviously has not played as well the last couple of weeks in terms of per carry average.
Here's my thing, Barry. What I'm saying is the last 2 years, Terron didn't practice at the end of the season and then still played. I'm not saying that he played at the number one offensive tackle level because I think Terron's having one hell of a season. But it didn't show that much effects of him not practicing. Can we and for instance, Terron has been all season. Terron, Jordan Poyer, and Calais Campbell all season, they have not participated in the first practice of the week. They have used those as a rest day. And when you're in your 30s, sometimes your body needs that. But can you think of any reason why you should be concerned that Terron is not practicing?
I'm not concerned at all about him not practicing, Omar. My concern is that there's a knee issue that exists, and we know now. And does he take a wrong step? Does someone hit him in the knee with a helmet during a game? Does something happen to make the condition, which already exists, worse? That would be my concern. It's got nothing to do with whether he practices or not, and he's obviously playing at an extraordinarily high level. Here's another question on the offensive line. The Isaiah Wynn clock is ticking. They've got to activate him within 14 days from the knee and quad injury that's kept him out all year. Has Rob Jones done enough in your eyes? He's allowed 4 sacks this year. The run blocking's been adequate. Has he done enough where you keep him in there? Or the minute Isaiah Wynn is healthy, do you put him back knowing that in his 7 starts last year, he didn't give up a single sack and he only gave up a few pressures?
Oh, it totally depends on how his knee, and I think there's another injury on his injury report.
It's the quad as well. It's still listed as a quad from the injury last October that sidelined him for the year.
No. I'm talking about Rob Jones.
Rob Jones, exactly. Yes, Rob Jones now is dealing with a couple of injuries. The knee and something else was listed on the injury report as well today. So I guess whichever one is healthier. For Jones, it's a groin, Omar. Okay. So a knee and a groin now for Rob Jones.
Here's the thing, and this is what I've learned over 14 years of covering NFL teams and professional sports and staying at Holiday Inns, even though I'm a Marriott guy. When you have something that's bothering you, especially something in your lower extremity, and you're basically using your other muscles to brace it, to prevent it from getting worse, then other things are impacted. A hamstring, a calf, a groin, a quad. And that's my worry and fear about Rob Jones. We might need to sit Rob for a 2-week period to let things kind of cool down. Now, the problem that we have there is, how much is Isaiah Wynn ready and progressing? This is week 2, and they didn't really practice today. If we continue to ramp it up, we have to ramp it up to the point where he can actually be a backup. Last week, they had to have an offensive tackle from the practice squad elevated to be a backup guard. This week, hopefully he's getting to the point where he can actually be elevated. But then to elevate him, you have to find a roster spot. And you know how this Dolphins team acts. They act like they can't find a roster spot, even though they found one for David Long Jr.
I mean, there's an obvious guy to look. Andrew Meyer, the rookie from UTEP who hasn't played a snap all season. Chris Greer said he looks like, a truck driver? So he's on the team because he's a truck driver. I don't know. I know he's got promise, but there's a spot right there. The Eskridge you could probably do something with so they can find a roster spot for him. If he can help you, he's obviously got to be on the team. I'll tell you what I want to talk about. I don't want to change topics on you, but this stunned me today. The way McDaniel spoke about lineup changes and benching guys, I had to bring this up with you today because I've never heard him talk in such blunt terms. He was asked about the fact that several starters have lost their jobs this year. We've both written about it. Obviously, Durham Smythe supplanted by Julian Hill. David Long not only supplanted by Anthony Walker, but cut altogether. We've seen Malik Washington play consistently more than Odell Beckham. We've seen Raheem Mostert drop from starter to third on the depth chart. So it was interesting to me today.
Cam Smith and Storm Duck.
There you go. Right. It was interesting to me today. He said the second they get in a building, it's important people understand you're entitled to nothing in this world. No one is entitled to a thing. You're not entitled to any position in the National Football League. And if you think you are, you're delusional because these are very sought after positions, coaching and playing, and the competition is fierce. So you better be up for the challenge. Did you know, Omar Kelly, that Mike McDaniel had this in him?
Yes, because he said something similar on Monday where he basically was like, tick-tock, you don't get the job done, you know, the next man is coming in, and that includes me too. And I thought to myself, I was like, damn, like, you know, this sounds like a coach who felt uncomfortable about his job standing. And when you look at what's happening in the NFL landscape right now, especially with guys like, you know, Robert Saleh, one of his peers, getting fired, the GM of the Jets getting fired. Now there's talk. Yeah, now there's talk. Jacksonville, Doug Peterson, who got hired the same time as Mike McDaniel. This is a win. Take care of business, or we'll see you later, and we'll find your replacement. And Mike said yesterday that includes me and my job. We hopefully know it includes Chris Greer and his job. So I did find it interesting. You know, I wrote something earlier this season when I was trying to analyze what the heck is going on and why is this team not responding to Mike. After thoroughly looking up and thoroughly combing through the roster, I wrote something about the fact that Durham Smythe losing his job was the only roster depth chart change that's ever been made in the Mike McDaniel era that's not caused by injuries in 3 seasons. And his point today was that, okay, David Long didn't lose his roster spot because I'm sending a message. No, there is no message that needs to be sent. This is a take care of your job business. It's not personal, or the next man comes in. I have always been a firm believer, and based on what I've seen from this team, if you do not practice well, you do not have your role, or you do not play, or your role gets minimized. And I think that that's what's happened to Raheem Mostert. I think that's what happened to Durham Smythe. And this is just a reality of where this team is, especially now that they are losing or trying to get back on the winning side. You have to perform to keep your job. And if you're not performing, somebody could potentially take it. And we've seen that on a number of instances this week. Now, the question is, because I don't think this is a secret, that Jordan Poyer is not playing very well. I don't think this is a big state secret that we, you know, hey, Jordan Poyer's not playing well.
No, he's got a 144 passer rating in his coverage area. I'll tell you that. But you know what? He's not being replaced. That's the way it appears. McDaniel said today that there are absolutely plays he could be better at. It surprised me that he said that. But then he added this. He said, I'm very happy with his play overall and what he brings to our defense. And Javon Holland would probably tell you that he plays his best alongside Poyer. So how about that? There's a guy who isn't going to lose his job, apparently, unless maybe he gives up 5 catches on Sunday. But would you rather have Marcus Maye or Elijah Campbell?
I don't know if that's accurate, Barry, because they were singing David Long's praises the exact same week that they benched him.
True.
I really don't think Anthony Weaver discriminates like that. I remember they showered David Long with praise the very same week that they benched him. So here's the thing. How much drop-off do you think that there would be if Marcus Maye actually started?
Yeah, I don't think there would be a lot. And, you know, it's hard to talk about a drop-off in a guy who's been such a terrific pro like Jordan Poyer, because you don't want to take anything away from his career, his body of work. He was a terrific player for close to a decade in Buffalo. Obviously, there was a reason the Bills let him go. Everyone gets older. Everyone's play diminishes except LeBron James and Tom Brady, apparently. But this is normal. It's to be expected. The only question was, would the big drop-off happen this year? It hasn't happened with Calais Campbell, who's older. Not only has Calais not dropped off, he's playing every bit as well as he did 3 or 4 years ago, as McDaniel said today and as you wrote about on MiamiHerald.com in the past hour. But with Poyer, there has been a drop-off. I would be interested to see what Elijah Campbell could do. We have a sample size with Marcus Maye of 77 NFL starts before this season. I'm not saying play Elijah Campbell. We don't get to see practice. We don't know how he's doing. But I did find it interesting that earlier this year, Anthony Weaver said, do not sleep on Elijah Campbell. And then he's promptly slept on Elijah Campbell because he hasn't played him on defense at all this year, except for a handful of plays. So I'd be interested to see if you could get more from Campbell. I think what you get from Marcus Maye might be a little better than this Jordan Poyer. I don't know if it's a lot better. It's going to be interesting to see, is there a last straw with Jordan Poyer or I agree.
What worries me
had enough change.
What worries me about Jordan Poyer is it age and our opposing teams attacking him. And I think if we get to the point where we can identify that opposing teams are coming after him and attacking him, either with their running back or with their tight ends or with pick plays, then I think we could look at the situation and say, hey, Marcus Maye has to get an opportunity. But it's funny you mentioned Elijah Campbell because I had this Twitter discussion with somebody today. I think, one, I don't undervalue what special teams means to a team. We've seen some very good teams lose games on special teams plays this season. A gunner is, to me, in my opinion, probably the number one special teams position that you have to have. There's a reason that good gunners play in the NFL for 12 years because it's a very hard position to replicate. Elijah Campbell is a good gunner. Now, you have Terron Neal, who's also a good gunner. That gives you good special teams coverage. And as you've seen, teams aren't really returning punts on us. Now, if we substitute maybe Elijah Campbell and put in Cam Smith, who has also had a little bit of experience at gunner, now are we opening the door for returns? I personally don't want to use Elijah Campbell at safety because I don't want special teams to get any weaker or any more watered down than they already are, Barry. Nothing personal against Elijah Campbell. I actually like him. I'm a fan. But I think he has to play when there is a situation where the fourth cornerback needs to play. But right now, he's the number 2 gunner on the team, and I think that that's an important role. But that's besides the point. If he's going out there and he's practicing and he's killing it at practice, go ahead, play him. Do what you need to do. But I don't think that that's the case. I think if anybody's going to replace Jordan Poyer, it's going to be Marcus Maye. And I do think that we're going to get to a point where the clock is ticking on Jordan Poyer and all the 30-somethings, because once we get to the point where there's not one loss, but let's say maybe 2 losses, we need to get to the point where we're playing the young players and developing talent because we're out of the playoff equation. And I know maybe fighting for a winning record is important for Chris Greer to keep his job, but we also need to know what we have in these young players. We need to know what we have in these young players so that we can continue to build as an organization, see what the Patrick Pauls have, see what the Patrick McMorrises have, see what Cam Smith has, see what Storm Duck has, as opposed to playing some of these older, more established players. But hey, if I as I said earlier in the show, I do believe firmly that this team is a play the best player, play the guy who practices the best. And that's kind of how Devon Achane has really stepped to the forefront as the lead back on this team because he's outperformed everybody.
And it definitely should be that way, even though McDaniel did not want to say that Storm Duck was ahead of Cam Smith and said that the fact that Duck played 36 defensive snaps and Smith played only 8 against Las Vegas was mostly matchup related. I think there's probably a little bit of fudging there. I do think Storm Duck has earned the right to play ahead of Cam Smith because Cam struggled, allowing 13 completions and 15 targets. But that's a competitive battle, and it will be until Kendall Fuller comes back. So to bring people up to date, Fuller is out again this week. Mike McDaniel said he's pessimistic that he'll play, which means he's out. He is doing some work. He's on an exercise bicycle. It's not yet progressed in concussion protocol to be outside. So we're going to continue to see Storm Duck versus Cam Smith every week to be your number 3 corner. And somehow left out of this battle is Ethan Bonner, who Vic Fangio loved, but this coaching staff apparently has no particular use for. They see Cam Smith and Storm Duck being better players, which is interesting how defensive stats can view players differently. It's hardly the first time that's happened, but it is interesting.
Here's my issue with the Kendall Fuller concussion and the second concussion. Barry, and you wrote something about Tua Tagovailoa and a neurologist who said that, hey, stop worrying about Tua and the second concussion, and if he suffers another concussion, then don't fear putting back in the game. I would feel a lot more comfortable about concussions if we did give them a month or at least 3 weeks worth of rest. What I really didn't like about the Tua Tagovailoa concussion situation is, and I am a believer that the league did play a part in it and kind of forced the team's hand. I'm not naive enough to think that Goodell, who was in the stands, didn't make a call or send a text like, yo, what are you doing with that Tua situation? You realize that the rest of the league and probably the medical community are watching this. Yes, he did not have fencing hands like Tua. But if you suffer 2 concussions in the season, your brain probably needs some time to rest.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Right. And this doctor, just for people who didn't read my story yesterday, there's a neurologist who used to handle clearance for Stanford athletes. He's had a very good career as a neurosurgeon, good credentials. He made the point to me that if Tua is not having a second concussion the same season, but if he has a first concussion, say next year, God forbid, in 2025, that he doesn't agree with automatically sitting him for at least a month. He doesn't feel that's necessary. His feeling was that when symptoms are gone, if he's able to get through protocol, he can come back sooner than a month. Other neurosurgeons have told me that they always see Tua sitting out a month or longer for every future concussion because he said doctors, and a few doctors have made this point to me, they've said the doctors always err on the side of caution anyway. And with Tua's case having drawn so much national attention, no one is going to want to be the doctor who's not ultra conservative with him and put him back in the game. It would ruin you professionally if you're the doctor who says, yeah, Tua can come back in 3 weeks instead of sitting out a month. I don't want to second guess the Dolphins for anything with Tua because they only have his best interest in mind. All that being said, and I'm very careful how I phrase this, Omar, all that being said, I've heard no one who's told me that he really medically had to sit out that 5th week against Indianapolis. Now, you could make the case that they needed the roster spot, but that game is ultimately going to be important. Again, it's not a second guess. I'm just saying they could have kept him on the roster, cut Andrew Meyer, kept him out for 4 weeks. He would have gone without symptoms for 39 days if he had played the Colts game. They won that game. They're probably a wild card team.
The last guy
I know it's old news. I know it's old news, but to me, I'm always going to be thinking about that. And again, I don't blame the Dolphins because they're just looking out for the young man's health, and you can certainly respect that. But if he had been available that game, all it would have taken was keeping him on the active roster and cutting Andrew Meyer, right? I don't know. They
don't like cutting people, Barry. You know that they don't like cutting people. It's just something that they're not very comfortable doing. So I am dying to see what they do roster wise when they actually have to cut people for Isaiah Wynn and the safety and Patrick
McMorris. And we'll see what they do with Tyler Huntley. We asked about that today, and they're not ready to bring him back yet. So apparently they're content with Skyler as their backup for now. Chubb, by the way, I wanted to share this. I think we both feel like it's becoming increasingly dubious if he helps you this year. He's not yet ready to practice. He's not going to be ready to practice before the Green Bay game when they barely have any practices at all for the Thursday night Thanksgiving game. Yeah. So what realistically is he going to give you? So this is their pass rush. Now, the good news is Chop Robinson leads the league in pressure win rate over the last couple of weeks, according to these metric sites. Over the past month, he's 15th among edge rushers in pressure win rate, pass rush win rate, according to Pro Football Focus. He does have the 2 sacks the last 2 weeks, but as a team, the Dolphins' 17 sacks are the lowest in the AFC. Only the Falcons with 10 and the Panthers with 12 have fewer sacks. And I agree with you on Ty Spauser. Even though he's not getting to the quarterback, you made the point he's setting the edge well against the run. So I certainly agree with you there. You need to give him snaps because of that. Ogba isn't quite the same with the bicep injury. And then Quentin Bell, maybe you'll get a play every 5 or 6 weeks. They obviously don't trust Kamara. So to me, this is going to come down to, can they get to any of these quarterbacks over the last 7 weeks of the season? Can you get to Jordan Love? Aaron Rodgers is a sitting duck, so I have some optimism about that. Stroud, not so much. Purdy, who tore him up a couple years ago, don't have much faith in that. Jameis Winston, we'll see. So to me, that is as big an issue as anything with this team. Are they going to get enough pressure on the quarterback to hold up in the back end, which they've generally done a good job of this year holding up in the back end?
Yeah. Here's the thing. And I agree with you. Chubb is not coming back for Green Bay. Don't forget Cameron Good. You always forget about Cameron Good. Cameron Good is ahead of Bradley Chubb. He can help you. He was ahead of Quentin Bell on the depth chart. He was a special teams contributor. He's coming back from a patella injury. Maybe he can help you. I don't see Bradley Chubb coming back before probably December 15th against Houston.
And even then, are we sure? He's going to practice at least a couple weeks. I'm not sure they'll take the whole 21-day window, but if that window doesn't start until after the Thanksgiving game, and we're not even sure it's going to happen then. So McDaniel told us a month ago he was optimistic Chubb would play again this season. We actually thought about asking him that today. We did not, but we will, because I wonder if some of that optimism has waned. Not everyone can return from an ACL as quickly as Jordan Brooks did, the Dolphins linebacker. He was injured for Seattle, tore an ACL on January 1st a couple years ago, was back in late August. McDaniel has said in Chubb's case it was an ACL plus, which sounds like a streaming service, which you order along with Peacock and Apple TV. So he had an ACL plus. We're not sure what the plus is. We don't know that it's MCL. So I think that's the reason why he's been out an extended period.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe he'll be back in sometime in December. Now, do I think that he's going to be a major factor or all of a sudden impact 5 sacks? No, but it's probably going to be better than adding 3 30-year-old veterans at the final month of the season like they had to do last year.
Right, like Bruce Irvin last year and a cast of thousands who all would have been great 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
Hey, I still don't know why they haven't kicked the tires on Melvin Ingram again, like they continue to do in December the last 2 years. But it'll be interesting to see what this Dolphins team does to supplement their pass rush. We talk to Anthony Weaver tomorrow. We'll have more of that breakdown for you on Friday. Thank you for watching Dolphins in Depth. You know how to find us on the Miami Herald's pages. And also, we like you to like and subscribe to the channel. We will see you on Friday.